Hello and welcome to another episode of Earth911's Sustainability in Your Ear, the podcast conversation with a changemaker working to accelerate the transition to a sustainable carbon-neutral society. I'm your host, Mitch Ratcliffe. We recently spent a couple of months testing the Lomi home composter from Pela, a Kelowna, British Columbia-based maker of compostable phone cases, low-carbon and low-waste sunglasses, and now appliances for a sustainable life. The Lomi is a countertop appliance that composts food waste, paper, and a growing number of bioplastic products that don't break down in home compost piles. Our guest today is Brad Pedersen. He's the co-founder and chairman of Pela. He's also the author of a new book, Startup Santa, about his career in the toy industry and the lessons learned starting a sustainable products company. During our testing, we awarded the Lomi our Greener Shopping Difference Maker designation for a product that reduces environmental impacts by at least 50%. The Lomi's environmental performance varies based on how your electricity is generated. But even in the worst case scenario involving burning coal or oil for electricity, the Lomi delivered just over 50% lower emissions than sending the same compostables to a landfill. The methane emissions associated with anaerobic biodegradation in a landfill are eliminated when these materials are composted because oxygen is mixed into the material as it breaks down. Pela launched as a maker of phone cases made from flax and a plant-based biopolymer that can be safely composted at home or in an industrial composting system. They also donate a share of sales to ocean cleanup and various protection projects. You can learn more about Pela Case at pelacase.com and the Lomi home composter at lomi.com. Lomi is spelled L-O-M-I, lomi.com. Welcome to the show, Brad. How are you doing today?
Mitch, I'm doing amazing. Really grateful that we have the opportunity to spend some time together.
Well, hey, it's the beginning of winter up here in the Pacific Northwest or the Southwest if you're in Canada, as you are. How did you decide to join Pela? You were co-founder of and had been CEO of a successful toy company for 10 years. What drew you to Pela?
Got it. It's a long question. I'll try and make it short as possible. So I was in the kids space for close to 30 years. I made kids toys, and during my time in toy making, had amazing adventures and opportunities, but always felt a little bit conflicted about the toy business. It's awesome. It's aspirational that we're putting smiles on kids' faces. But most toys end up in landfill within 90 days. So it's an incredibly wasteful business. And if you think about it, most people think about, Lego or Tonka or something like that. Well, of course, those are things that are not ending up in landfill right away. But most referring to are the impulse buys, like when you're at the checkout counter and there's those, surprise gifts there, which I made a lot of those. Kids buy them, they play with them, they break, they wear out, and then they end up in the garbage and go to landfill. So, $100 billion industry annually. And so when I left the kid space in 2017, the question is, what do I want to do when I grow up? And, I got really, really clear on a few things. Number one is that I decided that I wanted to put my life plan before my business plan, hence why I moved to as you said, the southwest corner of Canada, the northwest corner of the United States. So that was the first thing. Second thing was only awesome people, making sure that I was going to be building businesses with people that I felt passionate about. And third was only impact. I really decided that for the next chapter of my life, I wanted to do things that mattered. And in sort of a Steve Jobs way, how can I put my dent in the universe? So when Pela came along and was presented to me as an opportunity, it really kind of ticked all the boxes. And I've always had a passion for the environment. I was one of those dads that, when my kids put recycling in the garbage bin, I was picking it out and putting it in the recycle bin. So just always felt like, as aspirational as to terraform Mars and do things like that, this is a pretty awesome place. And we need to do our best at being its caretaker.
I definitely know the experience of editing the trash. My family is also sort of a mixed recycling community. Now, Pela was a phone case company first, and it's a biodegradable phone case. Was the Lomi designed to compost the food case?
Yeah, great question. The quick answer is yes.
Really?
Yeah. That was our initial impetus. And you going to tell a bit of the story of that, how that came
Yeah,
to be? Is
please.
that helpful to you? Okay. So the original founder of the company, Jeremy Lang, he spent a lot of time doing material science work, and he came up with this incredible formula for creating a biopolymer that was fully compostable, biodegradable, that was made out of flax chive and cornstarch and some elastomers. And so, he just happened to pick the phone case industry, which also is a very wasteful industry. $20 billion a year of phone cases are made. And if you think about it, like most people are keeping their phones for like 2 to 3 years. So it's incredibly wasteful because you make a phone case out of these really durable materials that are meant to last a long time. And at the end of 2, 3 years, when you change out your device, the phone case doesn't work anymore. So where does it go? Well, a lot of those phone cases happen to be made out of multiple different materials, so it's not recyclable. So therefore, it goes into the trash and ends up in landfill. So when Jeremy came up with this idea of this, let's make phone cases out of this, it was really, I guess, it captured the world's imagination, particularly when he met Matt Bertulli, who was our CEO, and he became his financier at the time, and the first sort of co-founder of the company, and started telling the story. And we started selling these things like crazy. And people, got inspired by the idea, hey, I can buy these phone cases that have this great end of life story. Mm-hmm. The challenge is that a lot of our consumers were living in urban areas, didn't have access to composting facilities, weren't home composters, maybe they were apartment dwellers. And so they were saying to us, well, where do I take it when it's done? Well, that is a great question, because if you don't have access to industrial composting facilities, and you don't have home composting, then it really limits where you can take it. So most people they would send it back to us. Actually, that's what we invited them to do. And we would actually give it the end of life and or repurpose it, regrind it, and then give it another life in the form of a phone case. But we decided that this was a bigger issue, particularly because industrial composters also have very disparate sort of protocol in terms of how do we handle bioplastics. In fact, most don't want bioplastics because they don't break down fast enough within the infrastructure. So that started us down this path of, well, maybe we should create a industrial composting facility that takes bioplastics, and we'll create this sort of centralized repository and look after on our end. And, we went down that path and realized that was going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars. The logistics were really difficult, not to mention the carbon footprint of that, not awesome. So we just kept kind of, this is how entrepreneurs go, is they solve their own problems. And we were just like, we have this problem, how do we solve it? So we started playing around with the idea of could we create something that would look after this problem at the home level, and really kind of taking, our impetus from Elon Musk, like every home can be a charging station. Why can't we, democratize the sort of electrification of society? So we started prototyping, playing around, and very quickly we discovered that we had a solution that would work. And kind of along the way, we uncovered even a bigger issue, which is food waste. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, okay, well, food waste is a big problem because right now about 50% of all waste is made up of food, and that's going to landfills. And then in landfills, it's anaerobically covered. It's covered up in a bunch of dirt, clay, whatever. It digests anaerobically, breaks down, creates methane gas, which is super harmful in terms of greenhouse gas emissions and global warming. So literally our initial impetus was to focus on how do we look after the end of life for our biocomposites, but at the same time, all organic matter end of life was addressed in this problem. And sort of the unexpected great as we were going down this path is that our output actually is a carbon sequester. So not only are we providing end of life bioplastics and eliminating methane gas, the output from Lomi actually sequesters carbon from the atmosphere. So it's kind of like this win-win-win-win, the trifecta, if you will.
Well, the device is really easy to use. We tested it for those 2 months. You put the material in: food waste, paper, bioplastic. There's a setting for bioplastic called Lomi approved. We'll talk about that a little bit more later, but add a little water, a Lomi pod, which is a bacterial tablet, basically, that accelerates the process, and you close it and it goes to work. How how do you use the different settings? So there's Grow, Eco Express, and Lomi Approved. What the outcomes are a little bit different and what you can put in. Can you talk a little about that?
Yeah, that's great. And by the way, I really appreciated your review, and you're very critical and also very complimentary. So we appreciate both sides of the spectrum, because we're learning and growing, and we're on a continual path for improvement. It's part of our
We
culture.
think that's the way to go here. I mean, if we don't work together to get there, so even critiques have to be constructive.
Yeah, 100%. In fact, a saying within our company is that perfection is the enemy of progress. Like, if we're going to focus on perfection, we'll never get to those outcomes. It's all about how do we make meaningful progress. So, okay, so there's three modes, as you pointed out. There's the Eco Express, there's Lomi Approved, and there's Grow. Maybe first, let's take a step back and just make sure people understand compost, and that it's, because I think there's a lot of sort of misnomers about what it is or what it isn't and what it means. So first of all, this is the original design of the way the world was created. Okay. In God's economy, there is no waste. Everything that has an end of life is the beginning of something else's life. That is the way the world was designed. That's the way we have lived for, thousands of years. And it's a normal part of the organic process. So compost is both a verb and a noun. So in the verb, it is a process of decomposing organic matter. As a noun, it's the finished product of that decomposed matter. And as we said, it's natural and it's a regenerative process that farmers and our ancestors have known for generations. And really, there's four things that we need to make compost happen. Number one, we need oxygen, we need water, we need materials high in carbon, and we need materials high in nitrogen. Okay, so those are the four ingredients required to make a compost process possible. And so what we've done with Lomi is that we've optimized the environment to allow the process to accelerate. Right, mm-hmm. So it's a combination of the right amount of heat, humidity, oxygen, and then we use mechanical maceration along with the probiotics. That's basically what Lomi tabs are. We just say it's like taking a probiotic. It adds the bacteria that does the degradation process, and it gives you an output. So the reason that we came up with three modes was that we knew that there was going to be different needs for different users. So by far from our data, the number one method is the Eco Express, right? Mm-hmm. This is the shortest cycle and basically takes the organic material and produces a dirt output that is acceptable to be used. In fact, I would tell you that as somebody who's been using it, I use Eco Express probably 90% of the time. And that output for me is something that I'm actually using on my lawn. And I have great looking lawn. So that's number one. Number two is the Lomi Approved. And so this is where we've spent a bunch of time with partners of ours who are makers of both biocomposites as well as products that are made from biocomposites. And so the idea being is that in order for us to be able to accelerate the clean economy made of compostables, there needs to be a piece of infrastructure that's currently missing to allow them to degrade at a rate that'll, compost facilities would accept. So we've extended the time, given it more time, knowing that some of these materials, the way they're designed is that they are resistant. They're meant to be resilient. They have utility. So it needs more time in the machine in order to break down those chemical bonds that are in the biopolymers. And so all of our materials that are currently on our website that are Lomi Approved, mm-hmm. all work within that Lomi Approved mode. In other words, when you put the stuff in, and by the way, I just want to be clear, it's a mixture. We have to come back.
It's not just the bioplastics. You need to mix it with other things.
That's right. Yeah, we need to have, we call it greens and browns. And of course, mm-hmm. to us, the biocomposites are more on the brown side, but you need a mixture 50-50 of those two different things that go into it. But in that environment, all Lomi Approved products will actually produce the output that we're looking for, which is broken down to a state, again, that it can now be accepted by compost facilities and or used in a gardening environment. And then the third, the Eco Express, it is the longest cycle, and it also, not Eco Express, the Grow mode. It's the longest cycle, and it's also the one with the lowest amount of heat. Mm-hmm. And so it's literally just a more drawn out process that allows the nutrient value of the soil to be at its highest level. We want to get to the right pH. We want to get to the right amount of microbes and the nutrients level. And again, time, like anything. I tell people, if you've ever watched winemaking, so in winemaking, the easiest thing is making the alcohol. Like when they add the yeast in at the beginning, the alcohol content is set. So it goes to what is it, 40%. Now it's about aging it to actually bring out the flavor, right? So with aging, wine gets better, which is why, older bottles that actually age well taste the way they do. So similarly to this, once it's broken down, it's broken down. Time, however, will now allow it to mature and get even more valuable and more nutrient dense and be optimal for somebody who identifies with a gardener. And quite frankly, a significant number of our consumers and people who support us actually identify as being gardeners. So we do see people who use that mode, but by far the number one used based on our data is the Eco Express.
We had an interesting experience. We focused at our home on reducing food waste. So we have almost no food waste. So I've been using a lot of yard waste as my greens and particularly. The browns are easy to find, but the greens I've had to take out of the garden. And it's actually been very cool because I'm reprocessing my garden constantly. The other mode that we're using is Lomi approved, because I do have a lot of bioplastic materials that I otherwise couldn't compost. We don't have an industrial composting service where I am. And so it's been great to be able to break that stuff down. I also find that we do Lomi approved followed by a grow mode with other stuff. Sort of to mix the material that comes out of the bioplastic. One of the questions that a reader asked after we did the review is, what kinds of molecular materials are left after you break down bioplastic? Is there anything that shouldn't be in the garden?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, first of all, I want to just comment on the multiple cycles, because I will tell you that, first of all, what you put in Lomi, most people maybe don't realize this, it goes from full volume bucket down to between 10 and 20%. So
it's an incredible difference. I mean, you open it up, you expecting to see a full thing like it was when you closed it, and it's just tiny.
So the practice that you're doing in terms of running multiple cycles within the same unit is exactly actually what a lot of people are doing. And with what you're referring to in terms of the Lomi approved and bioplastics, we also recommend that, because again, more processes, more cycles, the faster and the better and the healthier the soil will be. So I would say our practice is very similar. Like we run ours, and particularly if we're using bioplastics, we'll run it 2 or 3 times. And ultimately it just gets finer and finer and finer. So the question about what is the output? And I think the biggest concern people have is microplastics, right? Yeah. And this is something we got to really get clear on, is that petroleum-based polymers that, and by the way, we're not anti-plastic. Plastic is an incredible material with incredible utility that, quite frankly, without it, most of us would have very different lives. It's the problem is that we become abusive with the material. Yeah. And when we say single use is abuse, like when you take something that's designed to last for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and then you give it like a very short life, now it's abusive, right? So, so the point is that everything that we've tested that's Lomi approved is made out of substrates and biocomposites that are designed to degrade, meaning they will turn into organic matter. And at the end of the life cycle, you might find that there's still little bits and pieces of the biocomposite. And that's okay, because those little pieces are just, we've accelerated the breakdown, and they're going to continue to break down. And instead of it being, hundreds of thousands of years, it's going to happen in a matter of months at the most. It really accelerates how quickly they break down. But there's nothing harmful within that is going to hurt your garden, your lawn, your plants. But that's also why we're clear about having the Lomi approved mode, because those are things we've tested. We also want to be careful that not everything that is claiming to be biodegradable and compostable has proven to be. We've tested thousands of materials, and not everything actually does test. So that's why we're very careful to say look to our website about what's Lomi approved. We're adding, multiple products daily. And those we know work. And of course, the exciting thing is that there's more and more coming every single day. Every year, there's new polymers that are being designed that are helping us move towards this new future that we know is coming, right? We've been a make, take, use, waste society, okay? We need to turn that into a circular economy where we're actually taking from, like we make it from the plants. These are biopolymers we're making from plants. We're turning it into something that's of utility, of value. And at the end of this life with Lomi, we're actually turning it back into dirt to grow more plants, to do it all over again. So again, this is what nature does. This is how the world works. It is a loop economy. This is the way it was designed. And we're just accelerating the opportunity for the industry, quite frankly, to adopt these materials.
Now, we're in this long process of removing petroleum from the plastic stream and replacing it with biodegradable materials. I want to talk more about Lomi approved, but we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. We're back to continue the conversation with Brad Pedersen. He's the chairman of Pela, which is the maker of the Lomi home composter. So, Brad, the Lomi approved process, the review process you go through must be time consuming. How do you validate composting claims? Do you have a team that's just running stuff through Lomis all day long?
Yeah, I would say that one of the core values that we really hold tightly to is consciousness and community. The consciousness being is that we want to make sure that we are on the right side of history. And we do that through being transparent with our process, our practice. I think if you go to our website, you'll find that, we are really forward in terms of the claims that we make, but we back it up with active testing and the science to make sure that it's not just greenwashing, because unfortunately that's a big part of, or a big problem within the industry today. So, as you know, we're a direct consumer company. And as I said, one of our core values is to foster and engage with a community of like-minded people who are looking to create a waste-free future. And so we are looking to work with our community. And at the same time, back end, we are investing the time with a team of scientists to ensure that we're testing everything and validating it. So to answer your question, that's a long-winded answer to the question is, we actually have a whole team of scientists who spend a bunch of time in the lab testing, retesting, trying different versions, different formulas. And this is not something that we take lightly. We really want to make sure that whatever we're stating out there, that we can back it up with our own personal experience, as well as third-party endorsements.
Well, so we tried some bioplastic straws, bioplastic utensils, and they all broke down just fine. And as we were talking about earlier, we often run first Lomi approved and then mix up the Lomi approved result with some grow process and get a nice soil. Now, have you thought about ways to accelerate the testing process? I mean, some sort of open source approach that we could all be testing more so that we can get to a more composted future.
Yeah, look, we love this idea. In terms of consumer engagement, it again, as a direct-to-consumer brand, this is something that we are very active in our community, and we would love to have more engagement. And if you take a look at Lomi right now, there are literally thousands of reviews and commentary from our customers who are using it and providing that validation. The real question is, how do you standardize and validate the testing?
Right.
So, we don't know what people are doing where, what environments, and so the idea of democratizing it and going up to the community, we've thought that through. We actually at one time thought about setting up a DAO and allowing a community to kind of like own the results on this. But again, it's just the question of how do we standardize and control it. So actually what we see right now being of higher value. So we are in the process of figuring out how can we test faster, because that is a real issue. Like, how do we get to more products and process faster so that there's a bigger opportunity? And we do have some strategies of how we're going to lean into that going into next year. But the flip side of that is basically getting customer reviews and validation. So similar to like right now, Amazon is the number one review site on the planet, right? People go to shop for products, but more importantly, they go to review the products before they shop. And so similarly, what we would say is that our vision is that we're going to set up a repository of where these tests are done, and then allow our community to come in and validate and verify that our testing is accurate, right? That they agree with it, that they that product they would recommend and endorse, and just get the conversation going so that we have community engagement.
I just would love to see that list grow and grow and grow, because it would be great to know confidently that I can put the stuff in. It's just like the first step in the recycling process that Earth911 focuses on helping people with. You just need the confidence to put the stuff in the first place. The other question that occurred to me as we were preparing for this is, have you thought about a larger unit for business?
Well, the answer is, if you go to our website now, you'll actually see that we've teased out something called Lomi Harvest. And that is on our roadmap of new development. So as a company, we're thinking about the future. We've got a lot of feedback in terms of the existing machine, and the majority of the feedback is good, but there have been some people saying, hey, we got a family of 5 or 7, and
right.
the machine is just not big enough to handle. Not to mention, we've had a number of businesses reach out and say, we want to put these into our kitchens or into our infrastructure. And again, this current unit is designed to be, it's a kitchen countertop smart waste appliance. That's where it's supposed to be. But so the answer is, we do have a roadmap with different size units that can handle different capacities, and also different. I think what you should expect is that every machine coming out going forward will actually get better and have the ability to break down quicker, as well as take an increasing amount of materials. So we are thinking all about how do we optimize this, and kind of like your first iPhone, the iPhone 1, to where we are now with the 14. They're both smartphones, but very different devices. They just progressively got better and better. You can expect the same thing as we evolve Lomi.
Now, the other element of owning and operating Lomi is you do need refills for the Lomi pods, the bacterial probiotic tablet that you put in with a little water for each process, and then activated charcoal or carbon that you use to reduce the smell. We estimate it costs about $200 a year if you're using it very frequently to use it. Are there alternative ways or any ways to lower the cost? That's the other question that we got from people, is that they felt it was a little expensive. What are you doing to reduce that?
Great question. And again, this kind of comes back to, this is the first generation. And as we continue to get, as they become more ubiquitous, like everything, the costs are going to come down. Like if we look at what solar panels were 10 years ago, where they are today, it's very different. So our math is about 150. So we'll say $200, that's within range. And we agree that, that would be if you were using the Lomi pods every cycle, and also with the carbon filters, which quite frankly, if you use your Lomi on a regular basis, you'll realize that after a certain number of cycles, it needs to be changed because it starts to smell. Yeah. When your fridge tells you to change the filters, you don't really notice all that much, because it's like, oh, well, okay, I got to change the water filter. And, you may choose a few months to not do it. But with the Lomi, it's pretty obvious when you need to change out the carbon. And
we're just getting to the first experience of that right now, in fact. And the new activated carbon right away, no more smell. So it is worth the money. There's no doubt. But then just the question is, how do we continue to lower the cost of home composting to get to that distributed composting system that we were talking about?
Yeah. Well, first of all, let's be clear that the pods are optional.
Yeah.
But if you want the optimal experience, it's better to have the pods. It's no different that if you put your dishes in the dishwasher and you turn the dishwasher on, at the end, they're going to be cleaner. It's way better if you.
We tried both. You're absolutely right. It's a better outcome with the pod. So I'm not suggesting we shouldn't, but it's just, and you're talking about volume driving this. Now, how many people have purchased a Lomi at this point? Where are you in terms of that scale?
Yeah, well, we've only been shipping in the market since sort of end of Q1 this past year, so we don't even have a full year, and we now have over 100,000 units into the market. So we're thrilled with that, but clearly there's a long ways to go. Our goal in terms of, as a company, we talk about displacing 10 billion pounds of waste annually. And to get there, we really need to have about 10 million homes around North America adopt this. So 100,000, we are we're still a long ways off of our goal, but it's the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. So we've taken that step. I think we've inspired a bunch of people. We've certainly, the thing that we think is so cool now is that we get so many people who are buying because of referrals from friends. They've seen this thing or whatever, they're a little suspect, but they go to their friend's place or their friend is a raving fan because similar to you, they get it. They're blown away that, their food waste is virtually zero. They're able to look after these compostables that before they had no solution for. And so they tell their friends about it. They're inspired by it. So it's really, the word of mouth has become, the compound effect of this thing. And we're really starting to see it accelerate. So we think getting to 10 million homes is absolutely a reasonable target.
And, you've done a great job with a variety of the sustainability aspects that we look at. Your packaging, for instance, the box can be composted in Lomi. The bag that Lomi arrives in can be composted in Lomi. Everything in the box can be composted, except for one strip of packing tape that we found. And, hey, okay, change the paper and you have the perfect packaging. But that involved a lot of trade-offs. So how do you get your team to think about those sustainability issues and apply appropriate criteria so that you can profitably deliver a sustainable and compostable package? What's involved in that based on your experience?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for pointing that out because most people, it's just lost on that. It's packaging. It's something we discard, but we are very thoughtful with how we do everything. Remember that Pela is a mission with a company, not a company with a mission. We literally, we're committed to creating a waste-free future. That is the vision statement. And we do it by creating products with the end of life built into the beginning. So we're thinking through that lens. Everybody who's a part of our team, it's a part of the ethos. It's the way that we do things. But we're also clear that, like we said, perfection is the enemy of progress. So not everything we can do up front is necessarily perfect, but it's a step in the right direction. So as an example, that packing tape, the only reason we had to use that was because it wouldn't survive the drop test. We had the alternate material. So it was a requirement for us to meet the testing standards in order to ship the product to the end consumer. Because there isn't a great packing tape solution yet that is compostable that we found in our research. And if anyone has ideas, we're open to it because again, we're not the harbinger of all the best ideas. We really look to our community and those around us to help us find better solutions. So I appreciate you pointing that out.
Not invented here syndrome is also the enemy of perfection, of progress.
Right. Agreed. 100%. Yeah. So, everything in that packaging has been thought through with this end of life at the beginning, as well as even the size of the box. Like, how can we minimize the shipping carbon footprint to ensure, we're a carbon neutral company. So we want to make it as easy as possible for us to maintain that status and not even maintain it, but exceed that status. And so we're thinking through that lens and, our belief is that business can be the greatest force of good when it's focused on the triple bottom line of people, planet, and profits. And to be clear, without the profits piece, we actually can't help the people or the planet. You need all three. And people like Patagonia have gone ahead and shown that that's possible and inspired people like us, quite frankly, to say, hey, we want to build these sustainable businesses that are going to improve the lives of people on the planet. But at the same time, it has to be sustainable and profitable. So we're both transactional and transformational. It's not either or, it's and both. And that's the way we think about it.
Now, the Lomi itself is designed to last approximately 7 to 10 years. You're carbon neutral. And when you say that, is that because you're using offsets in addition to working on reduction?
Correct. Yeah. And I think we've also done the math that, you as the end user, after 45 cycles about that, you're basically carbon neutral with your Lomi in terms of use as well. So the nice thing about this device, it's every time it's being used, it's getting better for the environment, right? It actually
our analysis showed the same thing. It varies by the energy source, but you're making progress every time. So you are not currently providing recycling of Lomi, but of course they are not end of life yet. But you have a refurbishment program. Tell us about what you're doing when something is returned in those cases.
Yeah, it's great. And again, I want to point out that as a company, we've been committed to the end of life, and with cases, we've been taking them back and regrinding them if we can, and or giving them the end of life needed. And so we were thinking that way as it relates to Lomi. As you know, Lomi has only been in the market for a few months. So really, we don't expect a lot to be coming back. And as you said, 7 to 10 years is probably the appropriate life cycle. I mean, we build it to last. We've made it very durable, and it could probably last longer than that, but let's just assume that's
Looks
the
like it.
case. But in any event, we've had a few people that, didn't like it. I don't know why, or it didn't fit their countertop or whatever it might be. But we've had to take them back, and or there was a handful that maybe had some defective issues, but that's been a very, very small problem. In those cases, we've brought them back to our facilities. We've gone through them all. We've made sure they're operational, and then we've donated it to school programs. And the idea is to inspire the next generation about again, how do we think different about, instead of this make, take, use, waste economy, how do we create things that actually produce value with their end of life, right? How do we turn the garbage into something good, the trash into treasure? And Lomi is a way to tell that story, and particularly at a young age, for kids to see that, something that was before it was disgusting, was gross, was waste, and it comes out as something valuable that's useful. Wow. How can we inspire the next generation to think that way? So we have a school program. And if anybody wants to learn more about that, they can go to our website, lomi.com. We've got a bunch of information there, and you're also able to apply to be a part of it.
So, Brad, you've been very generous with your time. I just want to ask one last question, which is, what do you envision the waste system looking like in 15 to 20 years? Will we be waste-free because we are all able to do this in that Elon Musk democratized sense that you were talking about? What's the waste processing mix look like, in your opinion?
Well, let's just say that waste management is probably one of the industries that hasn't been disrupted yet. Our solution is to basically dig holes in the ground, collect it, and throw it into the hole. Mm-hmm. Recycling has been around for about 30 years. I'm a big advocate of it, but unfortunately, we're not very good at it. Less than 10% of what we recycle actually gets back into the recycling system. And the law of diminishing returns says that that's true. Nothing gets recycled twice. So I think as a species, we just have to understand that there's these existential threats that we're facing as humanity: global warming, plastic in the oceans, deforestation, the erosion and degradation of soil. And all these things are interrelated. They're not kind of in their own silo. They all are connected. But I also am a big believer that as humanity goes, we have the ability to solve our problems. Back during the Industrial Revolution, if you lived in London, you got used to the idea that the entire city was covered in soot.
Yeah.
And it was so pervasive that even the local species of moths and animals started to adapt and changing their coloration. And that city was literally a polluted, terrible place to be, with all kinds of terrible things happening. And today, if you go visit London, it's one of the cleanest, most modern cities. Why? Because we first became aware, and then we started to change our behavior, right? I mean, think about this. We used to power the world with whale oil. Like, it's almost crazy to think about that. And then we came along and said, hey, if we dig in mountains, we can get this thing called coal. And then we eventually say, hey, there's more efficient energy. If we drill this hole down the ground, we can get oil. Mm-hmm. And now Elon has taken us to this place where, hey, we got this massive nuclear reactor in the sky that produces a ton of energy. If we can harness that and power all of our devices with it, that is an exciting future. So thinking it through the lens of just transformational, we look at waste as right now, digging holes in the ground. How can we take, and instead of having this linear economy, can we turn it back into the loop that God intended? Mm-hmm. And we believe that the missing infrastructure has been a democratized solution at the home level where people could take their waste and turn that garbage into something good, into something that's valuable, right? And we really believe that there is a day coming where a Lomi device will be in every home. It'll just be a part of, no different than you have a dishwasher or a microwave or a fridge that are just standardized, that this will be a part of what people do. I know in my home and in many people I talk to, once you start using Lomi, it's a new habit that you look forward to. And, I grew up in a place where there was like a green bin. And so I had a solution, but the green bin was gross. It was messy, and there's pests and there's flies, and the raccoons left it on the ground. So I was already used to that green bin program, and we've eliminated that pain point. And not to mention, guess what? I now go out and fertilize my lawn. It's the best looking lawn in the neighborhood right now. So I have this thing that I would normally have thrown out that now has become something that's valuable and good. And so we are hoping that we're not going to solve this on our own, that we're going to inspire other people to come alongside and partner with us. And we see a future where most of what we use that typically has a lifespan of months to maybe a handful of years is going to be made out of compostable biocomposites, and that Lomi infrastructure will be there to intercept that, to provide a way to meaningfully break it down and eliminate all the single-use stuff that's going to landfill now. And we really believe that the future is cleaner and brighter. And again, business can be the greatest force of good on this planet when it supports a triple bottom line. And we hope to inspire the companies to follow our path.
Well, Brad, thanks very much for taking time to talk with the Earth911 community today.
Thank you so much. It's been really great to spend some time with you.
We've been speaking with Brad Pedersen. He's the chairman of Pela, which is pronounced a number of different ways, but Pela is the Spanish for peel, which of course is what you put in Lomi. We had a really good experience with our Lomi. We found that on average, we were able to reduce about 1.9 pounds of CO2 equivalent emissions simply by running it through our Lomi, our waste through Lomi. And our results were impressive, ranging from reducing emissions by 99% using renewable energy down to an average of just over 50% across all different types of energy generation, including petroleum and coal. This is a very interesting tool to think about, not just how we reduce our waste, but how we recycle and reconstitute it for like nature does. We have stepped outside of nature and think of ourselves as separate from it. Tools like this allow us to use technology to become more friendly and integrated into nature, which is a thing that reuses everything that we know. So I hope you'll take a few minutes to rethink your lifestyle and consider how you do composting. Even if you have a compost bin, that won't handle a bioplastic today. You'll need to send that to an industrial composting facility, which is simply very rare at this time. So a Lomi device is an interesting option for extending what you can do with regard to being a circular home. Think about it. And I hope you also take a few minutes to share this show with your friends, family, neighbors, and coworkers. You guys are the amplifiers that spread the ideas that we collect here on Sustainability in Your Ear. So please let folks know they can find the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, and other fine purveyors of podcast goodness. And I will appreciate your support, folks. Thank you for sharing the show. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe. We'll be back with another innovator interview soon. In the meantime, folks, take care of yourself, take care of one another, and let's all take care of this beautiful planet of ours. Have a green day.